Well, good morning, everybody. Uh, okay, I have some questions about doing a half mask mold, and I'll make it real quick for the person so they can upload. They can watch the video. All right, let me get closer to my sculpture here with my chair. I'm pulling it and pushing it. Give me a second here. I'm going to put the phone down. 1 second. I need to explain with the hold on. Come on. Dang, man. Thing weighs a ton. Okay. Sorry about that. I don't have it on the tripod. Okay. Let's assume this would be the half mask that you're talking about. All right. Say hello so I know who's on with me real quick. Oh, actually, I think I'm watching. I think I'm up. I don't know if I am or not. Anyway, okay, so assume this is a half mask. All right, the number one thing you don't want to do with a half mask is have the ears on the half mask. You want to make sure that your seam is just right there at the jaw line and around the top of the head. All right, like that. You don't want the ear, or you don't want to go all the way to the halfway point across the head. I would actually probably about right here is where your half mask should be, all the way in circumference, as long as you get the entire face in. You can even put some of the neck in, as long as you drop your line probably in front like this, if you want to do a half mask. Now, as far as ultracal and your soft monster clay, ultracal, when you're applying your first couple of coats, actually your first coat, when you're applying your first coat, it's even if you make it thick, you want to make sure it's a thick batch, because ultracal, if you make it too thin, it becomes too brittle and a little too soft. But when you apply that onto your sculpture, all right, you're applying that stone onto your sculpture. What happens is it'll harden. And once you have a hardened surface, within a half hour, it's hard. Maybe 45 minutes. There's not a lot of weight on the monster clay. There's not a lot of weight, and it's evened out because the weight is distributed evenly across your sculpture. Even if you're using soft monster clay, as long as you put it on very carefully, you want to almost like just drip it on from your brush, whatever you're using to apply the ultracal. You want to definitely drip it on. I suggest if you're doing a half mask, you want to make sure that this is laid down like this. You want your mask laying down, so your nose is up in the air and everything. And then I would drip the ultracal all over it. All right. And, if it's extra thick, you're just going to have to kind of brush it on, but you got to really be careful. All right. Now, with the ultracal, once that layer is hard, you don't have to worry about it, the weight of the ultracal deforming your monster clay, because the ultracal is already frozen in place. It won't go anywhere else, because it's already got the detail. So that first layer is pretty thin. You put it on pretty thin, and it grabs all your detail. It hardens enough to where it'll support the next layers. The one thing about ultracal 30 is you can layer it. Hydrocal you cannot layer. Just remember that going forward. Hydrocal is not something that you can layer. You have to do it all at once, and that means you're putting a lot of weight onto your sculpture, because if you're using a very soft clay, ultracal or hydrocal is a one-shot deal. You've got to get all that plaster on there, and you need about that much. That plaster needs to be at least that thick. All right, on your on your sculpture, because what the stone actually does is it absorbs moisture out of the latex. It pulls the moisture out of the latex and it goes into the mold, all right, into your stone mold, and it evaporates over time, you know. So if you're using that mold over and over and over again, like really quick, after, you know, after 2 days, you're pulling a mask and then you're doing another one right away. I wouldn't do that. I would never take a mold and overwork it too hard. You're better off making a couple molds with a master copy. But half masks, they're pretty simple as long as you don't have any lock. I tried to explain what a lock is. Imagine your hand is in plaster, all right, and right around my wrist, I put my hand inside of a bucket of plaster, all right, and I sink it all the way down beyond my wrist. Well, my hand's bigger here, you know, and my wrists are smaller. Well, once that stone hardens, you won't be able to pull your hand out of there unless you break your fingers, because your wrists are a lot smaller than your hand is. So when I say lock, like if you look at this face, right? The only way I can separate this mold, if it's a two-part mold, is I have to pull it forward down. I could never go up with it, pulling it up, because the chin would lock. Once the plaster is really hard around that chin, the clay is going to keep me from pulling up on that. You know, the clay will stop me trying to separate it there. When you're doing, like on this particular way of doing a mold, what I'm going to do is I'm going to use clay for my ears, and I'll block it in here. I'll just make sure it goes right to the edge. Let me turn this on its side so you can see it a little bit from the side. Now you can see, man, that's sharp. This opening area here, right? The only thing I need to clay, because I'm going to actually do the back half of this two-part mold first. The back half gets done first. The first thing I have to do is put a clay, I want to call it a well. You know, you're gonna capture anything that runs down, because the back half of this mold, I do it in such a way where I keep it the way it is, vertical. All right, and then what I do is I make sure that I get all the details, and I brush on, and I get it thick, and I get it nice and thick, and I make sure I build up the walls nice and thick. In other words, my back wall, hold on, let me move this a little bit better so it's on a straight angle. My back wall, when you're looking at this, like when I put the plaster on, and the plaster's about that thick on the actual mold or actual sculpture, and when I get to about here, I start piling up the plaster up against the back side of this wall. So this way, when I go to try and take this wall, this half of this sculpture off, all I have to do is tap on it with the hammer and break it free. You notice how the dividing wall is sitting at the highest point of my head there? That's exactly where the dividing wall sits, because I want it to separate down. So, yeah, to answer your question roughly about the monster clay, once that first layer gets hardened, then it's going to hold its own weight as you layer it. Now, I would always, when I do Ultra Cal 30 over top of my molds, I always build it up. I don't always try to throw it all at once. I do like a 24 ounces of water with one, 24 ounces of water with one, one batch is, you know, made up with 24 ounces of water. And then what I do is I add the plaster to the water. You never add water to plaster. Because you have to sift it in to the water that's already there, and use cold water because it gives you more working time. Sift the plaster into the water until you get like islands of dry powder starting to form at the surface, where you have almost all the plaster is completely filled in, then I fill in just a little bit more just to make the entire surface just a little white dry. Then you let it sit for about 3 to 5 minutes, maybe 3 minutes, and it'll saturate. And then when your plaster is saturated, it starts to crack like a dry lake bed in your bucket of 24 ounces of water. And that's when you know you have good saturation. And then you mix it by hand. All right. And then you mix it by hand because you want to feel those clumps. And the way I do it is I just constantly mix like this in the bucket, and I feel those clumps and I smash them up. And but waiting that 3 minutes for for complete saturation definitely helps you with your plaster. Now, you never want to add water to plaster because it would be very lumpy and you just don't do it that way. Always add your plaster to the water and make sure your water is cold. So, with that saying, I think you have to, you just have to be careful when it comes to if you're doing a two-part mask, they're a lot more difficult because you got to separate, one half. All right, if you look at this face, all your locking points are down below the face, underneath the nose. Now, when I separate these two pieces, the first part that I take off is the back half. All right, I separate and I drop the back half off. Now, this side has the wall build up just like I did. Now, I don't separate anything from here until both front and back are plastered completely. You don't do any separating. You make sure you do your register keys. You want your pry points. I put plenty of pry points whenever I make my mold. So I do the plaster, all right, on both sides. All right, first of all, this dividing wall that's here, aluminum, what I do is I do the back half. I bring it up as about that high. It's not all the way up. And then once this back half is hardened, then what I do is I pull the shims out. I pull all these metal shims out of there. Then that stone wall becomes, actually the stone wall will be on this side. Then what you do is you start plastering this side right up against on the plaster itself. But you have to put a release on the stone around the on this wall, because the release, you don't want your two plasters sticking together. All right, so I use Vaseline. Whenever I put Vaseline on the walls, I make sure I put a nice coat of Vaseline all over this wall, and then I start sticking the plaster up against it. And eventually it starts grabbing onto the stone, but not to the point where it doesn't separate. So once you have the two halves put together, then with those pry points, however thick like say your mold comes out to about here on the sculpture. Some people make them thinner. I make them a little thicker, my molds, because I make master copies like that urethane one here. I make master copies of my original sculpture every time I do it. So, with that being said, I don't know how to, I almost have to really do it for you so you can see the process. I just put the dividing wall on today. The rain's still raining outside. I'm getting freaked out. I'm hoping tomorrow the sun comes out because I really need to get this thing molded. It's now the 17th of October. I'm trying to get this mask done for my brother. He wants an H2 version paint job of this sculpture. And believe me, this sculpture is so much different than this one. I've done a lot with the scowl. It's bumped out farther. The angles, everything's right. The chin line, everything is right on this sculpture. It looks really good. I'm super happy with this particular sculpture now. And moving forward, hang on, let me turn this. I don't want to bang it because I got the shims in it and I don't want to hit anything. hold on, let me put this down. Let's put that down and turn this the right way. Oh yeah. Okay. Oops, I'm blocking the camera, sorry. So, yeah, this is, I'm very happy. I love the way this eyebrow came in. It just really looks perfect. It's, that's exactly how the original looked. Even down to the fine, even the lines in the hairline is exactly like the original mask. Even on this side, it's pretty much identical to this. But that side is real important. This right side, that eyebrow has to be right, or else the whole mask does not look right. I have to make this area right in here just a little bit wider, just a little bit more like I want it to go thin and then a little bit wider. This check in this area, it's not quite there yet. So I'm gonna fix that first thing in the morning before I move forward with this mold. But I'm just seeing these little things that I want to, fix right before the finish line. And I saw it tonight. Actually, is what I noticed. I thought, oh my God, I gotta get that check mark fixed on the cheek. And basically, what I need to do is, okay, that's right there. I know what I need to do. I need to get this just a little bit wider and bring it in. Kind of blend it a little better. See what I'm doing? Yeah, see, that's what I needed to do to that. And what I'm going to do now is I have to texture it. That's the only thing I have left to do. I just don't want to pull out the paint brushes right now. I can do that tomorrow. Yeah, so pretty much that's where we're at. We're ready for mold. Really ready. And it's going to be awesome. I can't wait to get this done. It's going to be nice. So it's going to be very, very nice mask. This is going to be the scowl looks about perfect on the scowl. So anyway, guys, I need to jump off of here and go about my business. I'm still working on my computer over there on other stuff, but hopefully the weather breaks tomorrow and I get some sun, because I don't want to do this in any dampness or rain or anything like that, because when you're putting stone on your sculpture, you just cannot. You can't have moisture because it can weaken your sculpture, your stone as you're applying it, because it won't dry out. And if it's raining on it, it won't dry. Period. And it'll dry, but it'll soften that plaster by getting too wet, thin it out, that kind of thing before it cures. So anyway, let me jump off of here. It's late at night, and I got things to do, and I'm not quite done for the night. And once I get finished here, I'm going to wrap it up for the night and go watch some boob tube. And I'm just going to say, because I don't want to be too negative, because I really did love the Halloween series. I'm jumping ship. My mind's floating all over the place because I'm tired. I was thinking about the movie Halloween Ends, and I did watch it tonight on Peacock, and I'm disappointed. big time. Really disappointed. But I'm not going to spin any kind of negativity. You just never know in this business. I'm not trying to get people mad at me because they might love it versus what I think. But I'm an old school guy, and I'm not going to be too harsh about it. It's a movie. It's if you like it, you like it. If you don't, you don't. You're just like everybody else. But yeah, I'm not going to say too much publicly on the video here. You ask me privately, that's a different story. But publicly, I'm not bashing anybody's movie or anybody's work. So, with that said, I think I'm going to get off of here and get back to work. Got to get back to work. And you guys have a great day. Oh, I'm going to explain something. I'm so close with the camera here. And notice how my hand gets it pulls it in. Well, that's why this doesn't quite look right now, because it looks like the face is too narrow. It just doesn't, like the shape of the head's not right. That's an illusion. It's because of the camera. You always want to film, especially with these 4K cameras. Like I'm using an iPhone 11 Pro Plus or whatever the hell it is. It's those 4K cameras really draw things in if you're too close. You always want to film about 6 feet away. You have to be at least 6 feet away so you get the actual size. It looks right. Anything too close, you can make somebody look real thin. You can make their face look thinner. But close-up shots are not very good with these particular phone, the iPhone 11 Pro Max. But if I back up, I don't know if I'm far enough back, but I'm backing up and you can see the difference in the way it looks. Different. And as soon as you bring it in, look, see how it's pulling in? Changes the whole shape of the head. So, yeah, it looks good. This is a really nice sculpture. I'm really happy with it. So peace, guys. Have a great day, and I'll see you on the next vid. Bye.